or what happens within a Jewish ethical perspective, is the fact that there are many, many ethical concerns swirling around any one issue. And then you have to balance them. And then you have to try and make a decision from them, and so forth and so forth. And the fact is the result of that is a different type of ethical perspective, because the ethical perspective becomes much more there's greater recognition of the complexity of ethical decision making. There's a greater recognition of the fact that things aren't black and white. With almost any decision you make, there's going to be a side to it that there could be a part that has a negative side to it, and a part that has, there could be that in the end has 86% of what's going to result is good, but there's going to be 14% that's not good. In other words, in every ethical decision and so forth. And therefore, what happens is you become very sensitive to the challenge of making an ethical perspective. One of the ways that this is shown is in the case of euthanasia. Okay, because the fact is that the straightforward halachic concept of euthanasia is that it's awesome. The remarkable thing about it is that even with the recognition that it's usher, and that it's ritzicha, and that it's misa, there is another recognition.
What does ritzicha mean again?
Murder.
Oh yeah, of course.
Right. But at the same point in time, there's another side to it that says, I understand, the person's in a lot of pain, there's no quality of life, and so forth. There's an interesting statement. There's a statement in Chazal, Hatov berofim legehenim. Right? The best doctors go to hell. The way most people understand that statement is that the best doctors think that they are arrogant, think it's them, and therefore they have no hakara of a kosher baruch hu being in the process. Therefore, it's me. I'm the one who saved the person, and therefore the rest doctor, the simple understanding, the best doctors are so arrogant that they have no todah, no hodah to Kodesh Baruch Hu for what they've done, and therefore that's why they're punished. There's an interesting viewpoint. I forget who actually says this, but I know it was brought down in Lord Jacobowitz's book on Jewish medical ethics. He was the first person to write a book on Jewish medical ethics. So he brings down a Rishon that says, "A remarkable pshat hatov berofim legehenim." The best doctors go to hell. It says because the best doctors are the most sensitive doctors, and if you're really, really sensitive, and you see a guy who's not going to get cured, and he's going to, and he's in a lot of pain.
He directs it, and that he pushes it there.
He does euthanasia, and that's why he goes to Gehenna. You know, so it's a remarkable concept. So you see this in the working of rabbis on the issue. You would think that some rabbis, it's like us and so on, and yet you see rabbis struggling with it, like almost like we find a heter to try and take this person out of the pain. On the other hand, it's a life. And the tension of the two sides exist in the mind. So you have different viewpoints and so forth and so forth. But the fact is that's a good example of Jewish ethics, where you actually are sensitive to both sides. You understand there's going to be a conclusion. You understand that one is right and one is wrong. But you understand that it's not, like Yetzer Hara and Yetzer Tov, where there's an evil drive and a good drive and so forth. You understand that, yeah, I understand that you want to deal with Asia. Now, the truth is, there's an interesting statement by Ramosha, which I constantly quote, that shows you how absolutely remarkable it is, and how far someone who's sensitive to both sides can really go. Did I tell you? I might have mentioned it last week. The case of Hanani ben Shradim, right?
Yeah.
So I did mention it last week. So the Ramosha's concept that maybe euthanasia is mutter by a goy tells you this kind of situation. So the truth is that this is an aspect of what happens throughout Jewish ethics, in the sense that you're constantly dealing with the tension of two situations. Okay?
So is there any exceptions to that situation?
In terms of black and white?
Yeah, is it very crystal clear? Like, if someone, let's say,
Pork is also.
Let's say you're in a warfare and someone is got hit by napalm, you're not allowed to shoot him in order to stop his pain. So even though he's going to die in 2 minutes.
Okay, so that's one of the problems. The truth of the matter is by the actual halachas of euthanasia, it's not. If you actually look at the entire spectrum of halachic opinions, it's not so simple. I mean, you have the case of Shaul Melech, where Shaul Melech was killed by someone. And the question is that why was it okay to kill him? So because there was a question of him, was it just an issue of the fact that it was euthanasia, or was it a question of, I mean, the truth is, even by Hanani ben Shradim, there are Meforshim who say that really it's only Midas Chasidus, that in that situation he was going to die anyways. There are people who say that basically he could have opened his mouth. It was only Midas Chasidus and so forth. There are certain viewpoints of that nature, because you do have cases, classic case being by Shaul, where you have a case of euthanasia happening. So the thing I'm trying.
What's the whole story with Shaul?
Shaul was in battle. He was dying. He was afraid he was going to get captured by the Plishtim, where he would have been tortured and mocked as Melech Yisrael and so forth and so forth. So there was was called a Ger Amalek, killed him. Then this Ger Amalek goes back to David and says he killed Shaul, and David kills him.
Yeah.
So the question is why? So there's a whole bunch of issues. Why did David kill him? So some people say because he killed him, but other people say because he was an Amaleki. There's Shitas because he was an Amaleki, and there's no Gerim by Amalek. You can't accept Gerim from Amalek, which most people say you can't accept Gerim by Amalek. But David felt it was improper for him to do it, but he did it with what Shaul told him to do it. So there's a whole variety of discussion on the issue. But the very fact that you have such a variety of discussion on the issue tells you that the issue is open to an analysis which tells you that the issue understands the complexity of the issue, and you find this throughout a lot of halachic issues. There's a variety of halachic issues where you'll see the fact is it seems that the halacha is very black and white, and yet there's a struggle because of the recognition of both sides. A guna is an example of that, where basically you want to protect the legal structure of marriage. Therefore, you're not just going to say, hey, your status as married is just irrelevant. On the other hand, you're working hard that this woman doesn't stay in this situation of not being in a loving relationship. Another example. There's two other examples, mamzerim, and the fact of the matter is, in case of mamzerim, you're always working things out in terms of trying to be matir mamzer. Another example.
That's in the Gemara they try.
Right, they're always doing that. They're always trying to be matir mamzer. Another example, which is perhaps an example that shows about the concept of fidelity in marriage. There's a concept that says that a woman who's had an affair can no longer live with her husband, right? Straightforward halacha that a woman who's had an affair cannot leave her husband to marry her lover, and she cannot stay with her husband.
Can she stay and only clean the house?
That's a good question because she can't be misyachid with the husband, right? Because once
yeah, for sure.
Because okay, so the point is like this: is that if you look, there's tremendous amount of work on heterim for people to be mater, to figure out ways to say that a woman can be mater, and so forth and so forth. There was a case someone told me by Ramosha where Moshe was mater a woman who had an affair. Basically, by saying that, listen, we don't have to believe you have an affair. Okay, so forth. The woman went up to someone who had some connection to Moshe and said, listen, I know the truth. I was there, right? Okay, so tell me. And, okay, you figure out all this legalistic concepts and so forth to get around it, but I know the truth. And he went to ask Moshe, and Moshe basically, when the answer Moshe gave, is that you can rely upon the legal process, and that's it.
For reality.
Right?
If the reality is more about the legal process than the reality of the action.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
The legal, you can rely upon the, I mean, the fact is, you find out in various circumstances where the legal process can override the reality. Because the fact is when you're dealing with these type of issues, there is what you would call the broad ethical statement that, hey, there's a concept here that says that, listen, the sanctity of marriage means that fidelity must have a very strict rule to it.
Isn't that's the whole story of the Isha Sota, isn't it? You bend over backwards to...
Because there's nothing that would actually let her husband actually think otherwise. That's what I
It's interesting in terms of the Isha Sota of what happens there. The point of the matter is, it might be a way of reconciling the husband to the fact that she's this, although the process itself is most likely very, very difficult on the woman. I mean, there was an interesting point, though. I remember one person once said to me, I once heard a person say that you also have to understand the context of that society. In that society, or in the world that you were living in, I'm not saying in terms of the Jewish side, but in the world that you were living in, if a man believed that his wife was having an affair, he could just kill her.
Well, you see that in ISIS.
Right.
There's videos floating around about that.
Right. Right. So the fact is that it's such a male-dominated society that So the truth of the matter is this person was actually a female professor presented his argument that the rules of Sota actually protects the woman, because it means that the man cannot just arbitrarily bring up this issue.
And in fact, the whole, I mean, it's the backstory of the Isha Sota, but if you really think about it, you really embarrass the guy. The whole process embarrass, and he has to be a complete hard person not to.
The fact of the matter is that and by the way, it's a machlokas in the Gemara about the jealousy that leads to Sota. Is that a positive thing or a negative thing?
Well, it's also like the husband caused it, right? That's
right, because he had to give her, he had to warn her not to be mishachas with the guy.
And he led her to
I mean, what you see, I'm bringing these examples to show you, and the very fact you end up with machlokas in the Gemara tell you that what you're dealing with is the depth of the emotional issue over here. There's like jealousy. What's the value of jealousy? There's a certain there's a certain value of jealousy. There's a certain aspect of this. I mean, I'm just using this as one example, but it's an example that exists in a lot of ethical issues, and it's a matter what you are open to. I mean, you think in terms of the reading of the Chumash in a very simplistic way. It seems to have very broad ethical statements. For this you get murdered. For that you get murdered. You get executed. This you get executed, and so forth. So it seems to be very hard, black and white moral statements, but the point is when you put it through the halachic ringer, what really comes out is the recognition of the spectrum of ethical ideas underneath it.
We have to bring up something since you mentioned it. Didn't the Catholic Church recently say that the idea of evolution is not go against? I think I recently saw a statement, and the question is, where would they get? Like, where's?
I didn't hear it. I didn't hear that. I mean.
What does that have to do with what we're talking about?
Well, it has to do with the whole idea of ethics and reasoning and.
Well, the fact is that if I commit, what you're doing is bringing up the idea of opening your mind to analysis and so forth and so forth. See, what happens is that what we do is if we hide away from our own perceptions, then we don't ask questions. We just basically become Ottomans who do this. So there's an aspect to asking questions. The question of evolution is not necessarily an ethical question, but the point is it does say, hey, listen, here's ideas, we have to raise questions. But the truth is with our ethics, we basically understand this, and what comes out from a Jewish perspective is that. So the fact is that what I wanted to further consider is certain ethical perspectives of this nature. Okay, so the truth is that what I thought we could do is that, first of all, if any of you have a specific ethical question, to see it through the ringer of looking at two sides of an issue, we can deal it.
Should be here.
What?
Well, Anna probably has a bunch of questions. She should be here. But anyway, ethical mirror.
Okay, but the fact is that's one thing. Or we can try and look at different ethical perspectives. But let me.
I do have one.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if this works, but the idea of vidui. There's a big piece I've been studying recently from Rabbi Nachman about the importance of vidui before the tzaddik to coming and expressing yourself. The half-formed thought. Normally people say, well, you don't do vidui because you only do vidui to the Rabbeinu Shalom.
Right.
But vidui to the tzaddik, as he plays it out, is absolutely essential. And he starts with Moshe Rabbeinu, who spoke to Hashem and did vidui to Hashem when he was at Har Sinai. And
are you saying the vidui of the tzaddik, or are you saying
no, to the tzaddik, that you should make vidui to the tzaddik?
So you're asking the tzaddik to forgive you?
Well, yeah, maybe.
I mean,
does this fit with what we're talking? I'm not sure.
Well, the truth is that it gets into the question of relationships. If you want to look in terms of, let's say, the halacha by a Rabbi, if you ask the Rabbi for mechila, the Rabbi has the option of not being moichel you, even if you ask 3 times. Right? With a normal person, you ask 3 times, you don't. But the fact is that there is an aspect where a Rebbe, it's a different type of relationship, and he has the option of saying no. I'm not going to work with you, even if it's not 3.
So does the father have the same relationship?
It seems to be specifically by a Rebbe.
Well, if the father teaches you more Torah than the Rebbe,
and then the father's your Rebbe.
Ah.
Okay. Okay. Let me give you. But what you remind me of is a famous thing from Yosh Ber. Yosh Ber says something very interesting by Vidui Meiser. He says by Meiser, when they brought Meiser by Kurim, they used to make a statement when they brought it to the Beis Mikdash. And when they brought this statement, they said, if you read it, it's like basically, I did it right, everything I did was perfect, and here it is. And it's totally 100% the way it was supposed to be done. So if you should ask the question, well, why is that called vidui? Vidui is usually chatasi.
Right. I
did something wrong. Here you walk in there and saying, I'm it. I did it right. And basically, the language of it is called vidui. So Rabbi says something very, very fascinating. He says, because the fact is, if you don't have belief in yourself, you can't do tshuva. Because at the source of tshuva is, I did something wrong, but it's also the belief that says, I can do it right. Which means you have to have a certain level of confidence. You have to be able to believe in yourself.
That's interesting.
It's a very powerful idea. So he says that the reason it's called vidui is because it's part of the tshuva process that you have to have a belief in yourself.
So how can you be judged on something? Actually, I don't know if you asked that. Can you be judged on something that you can't do, or you can't physically do at that point?
It would seem the fact of the matter is in order to be judged, you have to have bechira. So if you don't have the ability to control yourself or to actually control what's going on, you can't be judged. I mean, that's the Rambam's perception of Bechira. He says Bechira really, or judgment is dependent on your ability to have Bechira. So you have to have a Bechira.
That's a scary idea.
And that's where you get into psychological issues. The point of the matter is if you don't have, it's actually an interesting statement like this by Rabbi Lamb. Rabbi Lamb wrote an article in the early 70s about homosexuality, and he comes out with a term that says it's possible the person's an onus because he doesn't have control over his drive. And he calls it psychological onus.
So what about like a 26-year-old single guy?
So the fact of the matter is that's I'm not trying to be mutt or anything here. I'm just trying to.
The other color.
I'm not trying to argue, whatever it is. But the fact of the matter is that you do get into a situation where. I'm not going to try and say someone has Bechira or doesn't have Bechira. The point is I for sure am not going to get into a situation of judging someone. If a person asks me a question, I can tell you the halacha. It's asur or it's mutter.
Right.
That's it. Okay? And I can sit there and say that if you do something that's asur, there may be repercussions from it from a communal perspective. In terms of judging you, of whether you're mechuyev in the eyes of God, how do I know? Because I don't know your psychology. Truth of the matter is I don't know. So the point is Rabbi Lamb is interested in this concept, and he has sources to back it up.
Is that a norm in that?
Yeah, has this concept of psychological onus. So he basically says that the possibility is that you may have gay individuals with psychological onus. They don't have control. So the point is that opens up the possibility of dealing with the issue of what really is going on and so forth and so forth. I mean, the point is that what you're really doing here is you're uncovering the depth of psychology or the depth of issues. I mean, when we deal with ethics, you're dealing a lot with psychology as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and the point is
that's a major point here.
Right. Right, because the fact of the matter is that you can't. And we talk about different people and the backgrounds and so forth and so forth. You don't know everyone's background. You don't know where they're coming from and stuff like that. No. That all ties into the depth of ethics.
Rav Nachman says that if you want to do vidui, you have to first of all see some nekudas toivus in yourself. You can't come from a point of depression. It really fits beautifully in what you're saying.
Right.
Because if you're so depressed, then there's nowhere to go.
Because you have to have some faith in yourself.
Right.
There is a.
So how does the whole Muslim movement work?
The Muslim movement has to be understood correctly. Not every person who's giving Musar should be defined as a person who should be giving Musar. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's like when you it's that way by the way, within every system.
Right.
I'm sure that there's Breslevers who are speaking in Shem Rav Nachman, who the people really know Rav Nachman. Basically, they're saying these guys have no idea what they're talking about.
For sure.
Right. The fact is,
it's mostly directed at me.
Okay. The fact is that the depth of the situation is that recognition of balance. Right. You can't give Muslim people. I mean, you had this issue between Navardik and Slobodka in the Muslim movement. Where Slobodka sit there, basically the approach was, you're a Brias Hashem. You're a Tzelem Elokim. How could you do an Avera? So Slobodka basically said you gotta look like a mensch, walk around like you're chashuv and stuff like that. The Navardik idea was, no, you're low. But also don't be so haughty about yourself and so forth and so forth. The fact of the matter is while they took examples of both, the fact is you have to have both ideas in your mind. If you don't have any faith in yourself, you don't have any faith. You can't go on. You can't take charge of anything.
Yeah.
On the other hand, if you're full of gaida and thinking you can take charge of that you are God's gift to mankind, then you also don't have the ability to question yourself.
I could be wrong, but I think I was brought up in terms of the schooling I've had. I think it's fairly common that it's more like fire and brimstone. From your experience, like they don't have that self-empowerment thing.
A lot of times there's an assumption that everyone already has a healthy ego. Therefore, what they have to do is be knocked down a little bit. The problem is that assumption is not necessarily
wrong.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times you find this also with people who are constantly being told they have to be generous and generous and generous and chesed and chesed and chesed. Then you have people who are basically making the same mistake to their detriment, the detriment of many others, where they don't know how to take care of themselves because they're constantly they're constantly thinking the only value is when I do a chesed.
Yeah.
So therefore they don't know. The fact is you have to find out what the person really needs. Anyways, but this ties into recognizing the depth of the ethical perspective on so many different levels.
So in Chassidus, they say that for these kind of difficult questions, you should go to the Rebbe, who will give you the Eitzot based on deep things. And actually, from my life experience, you're better off doing that than relying on yourself, because you might not have the brains to do it, or the perspective, or the emotional. Well, like you're best to outsource the whole thing to a rabbi to be able to push forward.
That's the argument. The argument is though, is that at the same point in time, there's what's being lost is your own abilities. The point is in every one of those situations, there's an interesting. I mean, we talked about this last week also in terms of who asks the shaila. Do you go to the gadol or do you go to the rabbi here? The rabbi in the town. The gadol knows more Torah, so you'll get more of the theoretical concept. But the fact is, the person, the shul rav, might know you more.
Right.
The point is that it gets into how you balance out what it's about.
Depends what you're asking.
On many levels it is. Usually the answer that is often found is that usually you go to your shul rav and the shul rav is in touch with the gadol, but the fact is that it's not such a great idea for an individual to go ask the gadol directly. They should go to their shul rav who knows them, and the shul rav should be the one who's getting further information.
Right.
But it has to be a balancer. But the point of what you're saying, it leads into the issue of your own self-development and your own ability in terms of asking the shaila, and also your own growth in answering it. I mean, the argument is that how, if you are constantly asking, and by the way, that's part of the issue. When do you ask and when do you not ask? And the point is that to always say that the person who's asking a rebbe is totally wrong, that's saying, listen, the person is making decisions. The rebbe may have some information or some ideas I don't have because he's brilliant, he's whatever it is. By the way, it also leads into the issue of whether the rebbe has ruach hakodesh or not. Because once you throw in the concept of ruach hakodesh, it's no longer the fact that he's a genius; it's that he's getting the right answer.
Into the
right.
Well, the Christian would speak about the idea of channels, but that's a whole other.
But the fact is, at the same point in time, the truth is what happens to your own self-development and your own ability.
So I have a Torah that says that the job of the Rebbe is to give you general itzas, but not to get down to the specific, because that's his job. Rav Nassim talks about that straight up.
And that's part of the derech in trying to answer the question. But what you're really doing is you're dealing with that balancing.
Right.
The balancing of the. I mean, that's really. I mean, what you usually find in Jewish thought on almost anything, we talked about before when you said in terms of Kabbalah, constantly balanced, but the fact is what you usually find is that usually in terms of any issue, the key is to find out those two tzadim that both have their place, both have a value, both have an idea such as confidence, self-esteem, your ability to answer a question versus the fact that you respect a gadol, a rebbe, a rabbi who has knowledge of these things, and you balance out the fact that is it in my court, is it in his court, and so forth and so forth. You understand the tension, so you basically understand what happens in the world is usually that. And one of the ways this all breaks down is when people get into one camp or the other camp. So you have people who basically talk in terms of the value of autonomy, which is my belief in myself. It's all autonomy, and therefore they have no respect for any type of authority. And then other people who it's all authority and have no respect for their own autonomy.
So how do you balance it?
So the point is that's the big question that exists throughout Torah, and it's an underlying ethical issue. But the first thing you have to do is to first recognize the two tzadim, the two sides. Once you start to recognize the two sides, so what you're talking about is the value of autonomy and the value of authority. Right? And the first starting point of it is to be able to first articulate that they are both values. There's a value to autonomy and there's value to authority. And then you get into the problem, how do you balance it?
That was a huge discussion in Chassidus because there was those the Rebbe's the Tzaddik, and you're just the Chassidim, so there's no point. But there was other Chassidus that says like the Kotzker and others of the
well, Kotzker's tied together.
Peshitzka and all that said no, it's your responsibility. You have to become the tzaddik.
But exactly. But that's not just in Chassidus. That's
no, it's just like
you're right. But I'm saying that issue existed throughout Jewish thought.
Really.
That exists. You see that being fought today in the idea of Das Torah and the argument against Das Torah and so forth and so forth. What it comes down to is there value in autonomy? And the simple way of responding to it is by basically just wiping out that autonomy, wiping out that perception of values. So the point is the easiest way.
What are you wiping out?
You when you see both tzadim and you say is there value of autonomy or value of authority, you're basically saying, okay, they both have their place. Now the question is how do I balance it out? That becomes a difficult challenge and so forth and so forth. But what occurs is that the first step is to sit there and say there's a value of autonomy and there's a value of authority. Now, how do I balance this out? But the point is in order to do that, you sit there and say, okay, that's challenging. But if you sit there and say, listen, I want to get to a certain conclusion. I think this is the best possibility. What you're going to do is not present these two tzadim as equal value. If you're going to present each side as the only value. Therefore, what you're going to have is the Das Torah group basically saying there's value and authority, and they'll just belittle the value of autonomy, and then you'll have the autonomy group basically belittling the value of authority. And what occurs is that's in order to get to the conclusion. And by the way, that's what happens with simplistic ethical perspectives. If you're going to take a position against euthanasia and fully understand the value of quality of life, and really feel the Agavas Nefesh, right? And really feel the Agavas Nefesh of it's a life. There's no quality of life, but it's still life, and so forth and so forth. You feel both stadim. You are going to have a very difficult decision, and whatever way you decide, you are going to feel the pain of the loss of that value.
Right.
So if you want to create a ethical system that's simplistic, that you can sit there and throw out to people and say, hey, this will be the right to answer 85% of the time, right? So what you're going to teach is just one side. So you're basically going to express the idea that It's a life. Let's say if you're being against euthanasia, it's a life, and anyone who talks in terms of euthanasia is just a murderer and has no respect for life, and so forth and so forth. And this argument of quality of life is just a facade, and the person doesn't really believe in it, and so forth and so forth. And then what you're going to do is end up with people making the decision you want them to make, based upon the fact that they basically only present one side of the story, and they belittle the other side of the story. Okay, but if the ethical decision that comes out of actually seeing the weight of both sides becomes a really tough ethical decision, and that's what happens in many circumstances. You see this, and you see it throughout Shas. I mean, you think in terms of let's say in terms of an execution, right? It's remarkable. It's a remarkable statement of what they did with someone who they were going to execute. Okay, what was the number one emotion that you had toward the person being executed? It was all Rahmanas. You're about to execute the guy, right? Obviously, he did a capital offense, right? So you want to try so the mitzvah of Haftarech Kamocha is deemed to apply. So Borolo Misa Yafa, you're going to try and kill him in the best possible way. You basically drug him up so that he's not feeling anything. If they had morphine, they would give morphine. You know what I mean? So the point is that trying to execute someone and basically saying, you're basically looking at this and saying, gee, I feel really bad about this, but we're going to try and do it in such a way. And this is a guy who, if you're going to be executed in the Jewish court system, you must have done something really bad. So the point is and yet you compare this to executions in the 1800s. It was like a fair. You know, it's like if they were able to sell popcorn, right? Yeah. If they were able to sell popcorn, it was public and so forth and so forth. People used to take rotten tomatoes and throw it at the guy, and so why? Because he's evil. Therefore, we want to show that he's evil, and we want to belittle him, and so forth and so forth. We look at this situation and say, yeah, the guy's being executed, so there's a certain seriousness. On the other hand, he's still a human being, and we feel the pain of a human being having turned to do that evil. The point is, it's a much more complex type of feeling. It's a much more intense type of feeling in terms of that ethical perspective. And you live with it. And the fact is you're going to have people basically saying, I wish we didn't have to execute. So Rabbi Kim and Rabbi Tarfon actually said they never execute anyone. Okay, and you have other people basically saying that, you know, something, you got to recognize this guy's a Russia, and you can't have any type of tolerance for his rishus. But the point is that when you're struggling with that type of perspective, it becomes very, very intense. So I'm throwing out more examples of it, just in terms of a variety of situations. But I thought, you know, and it really comes out of issues. I thought that you guys might have some examples of this in terms of.
Keep it up. What is real? Keep it up.
Okay.
We're very strict with that matter in this sense. Well, I mean,
yeah.
I'm just thinking that also in dealing with, in navigating the waters of ethics, there's the intellect, the logic,
right,
and then there's the heart.
Right.
And from what I know, you start with the heart and then go to the intellect. So it's.
But the heart, that's what I said, the whole heart has a multi-layered aspect to it. On one hand, when you think in terms of thought or whatever it is, the heart, in terms of authority versus autonomy, can also because one part of you basically is to have an aspect of anidus and recognize that, listen, I don't know everything, which is an aspect of an emotion. And the other aspect is I have to have a certain amount of confidence in myself.
You need both.
Exactly.
I remember going to an event on a guna at the Bayit, and a woman who we both know, someone mentioning names, she stood up and she was very impassioned and she said, you know, you rabbis don't appreciate that every month a woman can't get married. It's a Jewish child loss. And Rabbi Karupkin said, look, she shushed him because it was all heart. There wasn't.
But the fact of the matter is,
it didn't help anything.
But the truth is what I'm saying is that heart. There is a heart, but the heart also is multidimensional. Okay, in the sense that the heart can have both sides of the idea. Your heart can sit there and say, I'm a human being, I can make, I'm entitled to an opinion. Your heart can also say, hey, listen, I don't know, I don't necessarily know everything. You basically can have both aspects in terms of your heart. In that heart, the intellect is not just the formulation of the two sides. The intellect is basically how you are able to balance the two sides, but the two sides can come out of your heart. When you deal with euthanasia, you basically are saying, I have the emotion of caring for life. It's a life. On the other hand, I have emotion for caring for pain. Okay, right. So the fact is, you do that. I mean, as a rabbi, you deal with situations. For example, when a parent is very, very ill, but the parent is still alive. It's remarkable when you think about this. You can have a parent who basically has been totally unapproachable for months. Okay, there has not been any relationship for months. The parent has been in a coma or whatever it is. But the fact is, as long as that parent is alive, there was still that emotion that my parent is alive. And the minute that the parent dies, there's a tragedy. And you look at someone who basically for X amount of months has not had the parent, okay? Nothing has actually changed in the relationship with the parent, because the parent was not conscious, had no conscience. Yet the fact that the parent dies is still a loss. So the point is, you understand the value of life, of just the breathing of life. On the other hand, children who say it, they'll sit there and say, at least my parents out of pain. But the truth is, it's not, oh wow, at least my parents out of pain, it's great, and so it's still, but I still lost my parent. The truth is that the heart oftentimes is only portrayed as one side of the story. This woman gets up there, it's multifaceted. So this woman gets up there and makes a statement about a guna. Every day a child is lost, and so forth and so forth. There's another heart to the sanctity of marriage. The fact is that there's an idea where you have these rules, and so forth and so forth, because there's a sanctity of the marriage. I mean, the point is that, and you see this. I've been in situations where Rabbanim basically, let's take a situation of a get that both parties to the marriage want to get, and the Rav says, no, this is a marriage. You got to work at it. Right. Just because you two want to get out, I'm not letting you get out. I've had Rabbanim. I know one case of someone where both parties said we want to get, and this Rav who's the head of the Bez of a Chashur, wasn't in Toronto, it was a Chashur Bez. I mean, not that the Bez in Toronto is not Chashur, but there's another Bez, and it was a Chashur Rav said, no, I'm not gonna Masada get for you. You have to go work in it.
With another topic.
Yeah.
As times change, or political things happen, you can have impact on ethical or even halakha. So what I read today as a fallout from the rabbi in Washington who allegedly, now he's denying it, but allegedly did some filming.
Yeah.
There's a Rav who's writing a teshuva saying a Rav doesn't have to watch a woman, albeit in a very sneistic way, when she makes gerus and she dips herself in. And I know people have told me they put up a sheet, so it's quite modest, but the Rav doesn't have to be in a room, period. You can train a woman to do it, and that's good enough. And I know from just my own personal experience, one second, they don't have a mikvah rabbi, they have a mikvah lady. So what could that, is that going to change? Could you get moral dilemmas changed because of political?
That gets into halachic issues and so forth. It gets into who has to see. Is it a din in Adis or a din in Dayanis?
Right.
See, there's a whole issue.
Right. They were going on Dayanis. They say we could train women to do it.
A woman can't be a Dayan like that. That's the point. When a woman goes to mikvah, right? The mikvah lady usually sees her dunk.
Right.
Now,
so the hair doesn't float up.
So why is it that a woman is trustworthy to say? Because we have a concept of eidach neman b'isurim.
Right.
A person can tell you whether something's kosher or not. Okay. In other words, and not only that, a woman can tell you something's kosher or not.
For a woman, it's pasoletis.
The fact is when it comes to isurim, you don't have this din of pasoletis. Pasoletis is a judicial concept. Okay, so the point is, if you didn't, then you wouldn't be able to eat any food for a woman who's in the kitchen.
Right.
Okay, so there's an idea of eidach neman b'isurim. So the point is an idea that it's an issur, and therefore it's a different type of aid, and a woman can give testimony in isurim. So when she goes to mikveh for nida, a woman looks and says, "Hey, she's down with her." She's out of her state of issur, and she's now in a state of heter. That woman can do. Okay. Now, when you get into the situation of the mikvah, the point is who has to see the woman dunk, and what's that din in woman dunk? We basically say that the dunking has to be in front of the bezdin, because it's a din of bezdin has to see that. Or there's an argument that says it's edus, but it's much more of a judicial edus. It's not edus of Yisurim, it's edus of judicial.
So how do they get around it?
So the point is that's why a man has to see the woman dunk. So what she's done is she's placed in such a way, okay, that you rely upon the fact that someone has told you that she's naked. I mean, the fact of the matter is you have to rely upon something that she's naked or whatever it is, because you didn't see her naked. But what happens is the way she's placed in the mikvah. Okay, I've seen some gerus. What happens is the mikvah is in such a place that I'm thinking of one case in terms of gerus. Is a woman stood in the corner of the mikvah in such a way that and the bezdin stood at the door, and the sight line was such that all you saw was the woman's head. Okay, you were placed in a certain place, and the mikvah lady puts you in that place.
It must have been frightening for her.
And the woman is in the corner of the mikvah, so you really can't see her, and you can only see her head. Once you see the head go under, then the idea is bezdin has to see the dunking, so that becomes the issue. In that case over there, I'm not exactly sure of what they're saying that a woman can do it. I don't see how it's only a sur, because it seems to be a din in this heter, not just a din in isurim. I'm sorry, it seems to be a din in the judicial aspect, because what happens is that the way gerus really works is bezdin changes the status of the person. It's a judicial conclusion of bezdin. Bezdin says you're now a Jew.
So it wouldn't work.
So I don't know what that person is saying. Okay, I really don't know what that person is saying.
So what about female rabbis? Like, what's it?
That's a different issue. That's a different issue. I mean, the fact of the matter is it's a much more complicated issue than most people think. But the fact is, it's a different issue.
So what's Devorah?
Devorah was what she was is a good question. Because she wasn't just a rabbi, she was a dayan. See, one of the problems that exists in dealing with this issue is our status of rabbis today. The problem is what exactly is a rabbi? In other words, what you have in halacha is a woman can't be a dayan. Okay? So a woman can't be a judge. Okay? The point is, a woman can't be a bal tefillah. Okay? She can't. The question exists today is what exactly does a rabbi do? So when you think in terms, let's say you call a rabbi Rav.
Right.
So the term Rav really is tied to Dayanos. The original Rebbe was a person who was given smicha. The original smicha was the smicha Kanim, the right to be a judge in dinei nefashos. Okay, that was the real smicha Kanim was the right to judge capital cases. Okay, the point is that what happens now in terms of a rabbi? So the rabbi becomes a person who's able to paskin shalos. Paskin shalos is a little bit different than dayanos. So the question is, but our rabbis today have a position that is similar, that is sort of comes out of the concept of dayanos, has sort of a connection to dayanos because you're talking about psak halacha and legal decision making, but it's not really dayanos. Okay, so that's
not ruach hakodesh either.
No, but the dayan also did the ruach hakodesh. Okay. Generally, the perception is Dayan had to make a decision without based on the seichel. The truth is, you're getting a whole issue of Ruach HaKodesh because the truth is a navi can't paskin based upon his nevias. So what occurs is that our modern definition of rabbi, it even gets more than because the right to psak is something that developed, but doesn't really have a real halachic status. It's just someone saying, "Hey, you know enough to be able to make these decisions." Right. So the point is,
here's a piece of paper.
So the question is, can a woman paskin? So there are many sheets that say a woman can paskin.
Can.
Right. So the question is, so you get into
what are like stories of like Gedolim who like they called him as a shalan on kashrus, and like he would answer, I don't know, I asked the Rebbitzin, and then he asked the Rebbitzin.
You don't have things, but you do have situations where there were where like the Minchas Chinuch says that a woman can paskin in can paskin shayla.
Yeah, but didn't ask her about a capital case, though.
Right? No, because capital case is not a shayla. Capital case is a din. It's dayanos.
So why do people care so much?
So the point is that leads into issues of communal status, and it leads into communal leadership.
Is snua really a big issue?
You know something? All these factors. I'm not actually dealing with the issue, but the point is that there's also an aspect of the minhag and the custom in the community and so forth and so forth, and the aspect of leadership.
In Breslov, they say if you have a shaila, I guess like to be more refined about the whole thing, matters of dayanos, they would have an uman, they would have the beis din.
Right.
Otherwise, they say go back home and speak to your local rabbi. Right. We're dealing with issues of davening and amuna, and that's all we want to talk to you about. We don't get involved in the other stuff.
That's what I'm saying, that it's a much more complicated thing, because what exactly does a rabbi do?
Right.
Okay, so he paskin shalos. Okay, fine. So the point is that part of the issue becomes when you have certain women taking positions in Orthodox shuls in New York City, the question exists: what exactly are they doing? So they're giving divrei Torah. Well, when we give divrei Torah, they are basically, what you have a lot of times is that they are doing a lot of the
outreach.
What do you call it? The personal stuff. Like visiting the sick. The pastoral duties. A lot of rabbinic duties say it's pastoral. Why a woman can visit the sick.
Actually, it goes on anyways, because the Rebbitzins visit the woman. It's going on forever.
So the issue exists is, can they paskin shalos? So there's an issue. There is somewhat of an issue of women paskin shalos, because in a communal setting, you can ask a woman a shaila in an individual setting, but can a woman take on a position of being a communal posek? And that gets into a Rambam, and that gets into something much more difficult.
There's a hierarchy anyways. Mm-hmm. That if there was this Shabbaton this week, and they said, oh, we're going to do Havdalah, and then we're going to daven Marv. There was another Marv to go to, but Rabbi Karupkin said it's okay, so it's okay. So sort of for that nuts and bolts stuff, the local Orthodox rabbi will handle it. Your chicken and your whatever, but it accelerates very quickly to speak to a gadol if it's a
right. But
big deal.
Also, if you look in terms of the yoetzet halacha,
right,
that has been developed, yoetzet halacha is usually under a rabbi.
What is it?
It's a woman who advises on halachic issues. Those what happens is usually in questions of nida, where a woman will feel more comfortable asking a woman the shiloh
to come with her,
or to actually ask the woman the shiloh.
Right.
But the point is,
that's been going on forever anyway.
But the fact is that the Yoetz Halacha is usually in a position under a communal rabbi, because there are some issues involved in that. But what you're getting into, you're going off into a variety of different issues, is the fact that it's a matter of underlying values throughout. There's a question of the role of women in the communal structure. There's a question of when you talk in terms of sneas, the fact that there are many women who will not ask shilohs of nida because they're embarrassed going to the male rabbi to ask shilohs. Okay, you know, and you get into real issues. I mean, the fact is that a lot of times when you're asked shilohs, I mean, you know, when you're asked shilohs on nida, you have to sometimes you have to really start asking some questions which are very personal. I mean, you know, and the woman doesn't want to answer like that. She wants to answer like and this extends to many other aspects and so forth. But anyways, but the key thing I wanted to bring out today was we talked about dynamism last week and so forth and so forth. What I wanted to bring out today is that in believing in a dynamic system, what you have to do is one of the first steps in that is to open the door and to see the various possibilities and to really understand that there are usually two values that could be against each other, but they both have a value. So the fact that we're talking about autonomy versus authority, it's not that one value is right and it's not the autonomy is the Yetzer Hara and authority is the Yetzer Tov. It's the fact that, and that's what Rabbi really points out from the question of you have to have some kind of belief in yourself if you're going to do tshuva. Right? So the point is what you're really doing is that what happens is to really get a true halachic picture, you're really opening it up tremendously. Now what that does is it creates a much more difficult decision to be reached. It's not so easy to get to that decision, because what you begin to understand is if they both have value and one value has to trump because that's the halachic decision, there's still going to be the consequences of that other value not being or being secondary in this situation. So and that can sometimes lead to anguish and so on. And the thing you were saying about heart is those values also are tied to the heart.
Right. So it would seem like you for the big things better be plugged into Das Torah.
It's
however you access it.
But the fact is that it's best to be plugged into it through a recognition of the individual. That's why to me it's a matter where you have a local Rav, and the local Rav is the one who then gets the information from whoever he consults and so forth and so forth. But that local Rav understands the innuendos. He knows the players. He understands the innuendos. Mayor Wagner was running for mayor. He came to speak to Satmar Rav, and Satmar Rav was with his inner circle and so forth and so forth. And Mayor Wagner was talking about how he visited Israel, and he's a big fan of Israel, and he loves Israel and so forth and so forth. Satmar Rav was saying, very nice, very nice. And so Sina were like, what's going on over here? What's going on over here? And the minute Mayor Wagner left, right, they immediately said, Rabbi, what's going on? He was telling you that he's a friend of Eretz Yisrael, he loves Israel and so forth. He said, listen, we have our own issues internally, right? Okay. But from a non-Jew, I want to hear that he loves Israel, because that means that he's a friend of Jews. Yeah. Okay? A non-Jew who hates Israel, right? It's not Israel. He's not going to be pro-Jews. You know what I mean? And the Satmar was very understanding of that. That's a matter. That's intellect, but it's a matter of caring. You know, the fact is you have those feelings. The truth is the heart has to have those feelings, and that's what, and that's really what I wanted to come out. I wanted to deal with practice. We got into the one you mentioned, something Rav Nachman, but I wanted to point out that it's a matter of getting those feelings inside you and understanding that there's those sides. So the autonomy authority one is a good example. Anivas and self-confidence. If you only hear fire and brimstone, that you are nothing,
right.
Okay, you can immediately get those emotions because you know your faults better than anyone else. So if someone wants to convince you that you are nothing, boy, they can get through to your heart very easily, right? But there's another side to you. No, I am something. So the fact is you have to have both those emotions. You know, I mean, they talk about that, having in one hand bishvili nibra olam, on the other hand ani offer vapor. One hand the world was created for me, on the other hand I'm dirt and dust. The point is you have to have both feelings, and then you have to balance out from there.
Right.
Ethical decision making demands the recognition of the dynamics and the recognition then to really see the big picture. And once you see that big picture, is understanding the variety of ethics and the balancing of those ethics.
And that you need to plug into your rabbis who have much, who are Talmid Chachamim.
And then once you see the depth of the question, that's when you begin to understand the intellect and why you really need people who can direct you in the answers. Okay? Okay? But the point is at that point in time, it leads to that idea. You begin to understand why it's not simple decisions. You really have to make tough decisions.